In this video, I'm going to share 5 deeply profound lessons from my spiritual journey. Now, I had my spiritual awakening back in 2019. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been on this spiritual journey. And even before my spiritual awakening, I already had some spiritual experiences. So I was already spiritual minded. And then in 2019 was when everything just made sense. Like all the dots were connected and I understood the bigger picture of things. Now, I've also been put out of work because back in, I'm not even sure what year, but when I was 19, I broke my spine. I didn't find out until I was 25. And so when I was 25, that was back in 2014, I had to have a spinal fusion surgery. And so that basically put me out of work. And I've been just on disability. So the point I'm making with that is after having my spiritual awakening, I had all this free time to learn about spirituality. I would, learn from the spiritual teachers like Dr. Joe Dispenza or Bob Proctor or Dolores Cannon. I would read books. I would watch spiritual documentaries or YouTube videos and just indulge myself in these spiritual concepts, learning as much as I could. And then not only intellectually learning, but also I had the time and energy to apply what I was learning because I was at home in this house every day, just with myself. And, I didn't have a job to go to, so that's what I would do. I would apply a lot of the things I was learning. And from my experience, that's the best way of learning, is not just intellectually learning it, is actually putting it into practice and learning from doing. So after being on this journey for 5 or 6 years, I have now come up with my top 5 deeply profound lessons that I want to share with you. So the first profound lesson was to stop identifying with your ego mind. The ego mind is all that negative internal chatter. It's where all our negative fear-based thinking comes from. And the ego mind is the false self. A lot of people, because I was one of these people, I did not realize I had an ego and I had a soul. I didn't realize that there was like these 2 different aspects of me. And like a lot of other people, I was identifying with my ego mind. I thought that's who I was. Your ego is important, so we don't want to view the ego in a negative light because a lot of people, they'll say things like, the ego is not your amigo. The ego is who you are. It's your sense of self, your identity, your likes, your dislikes, your hobbies. So we don't want to have a negative view on it. The ego is important for the human experience because, as the soul, which is the true self, we're all connected as one. There's the law of one, right? And the ego is what gives us the illusion of separation so that we can have this human experience as an individual. So that's why the ego is important. The ego, again, is where all your negative fear-based thinking comes from, but the ego is just trying to keep you safe. That's all it is. The ego mind has good intentions. The ego's job is to survive, and that's why it's just trying to keep you safe. And in order to keep you safe, it causes that negative fear-based thinking. For example, let's say you want to pursue a new hobby. You've signed up to a new class and you go to start this class and then you may experience self-doubt. What if people don't like me? What if they laugh at me? What if I'm not good at this? Those negative fear-based thoughts is the ego trying to keep you safe by getting you back into your comfort zone because the ego doesn't like the unfamiliar. So what I found is that just understanding that you have an ego mind, to not identify with it because it's not who you truly are, understand that it's important, but understanding how it operates so that it doesn't control you. So just like the example I gave, if you aren't aware that your ego likes to keep you in the comfort zone, and one of the ways it does that is with self-doubt, then it's really easy to allow that self-doubt to get you back into the comfort zone, to stop you from pursuing whatever you want to pursue. Because I have this awareness, I can acknowledge it. Oh, this is just my ego trying to keep me safe. So stop identifying with that ego mind, and the way to do this is by, people recommend to give the ego a name. Like, for example, they could be like, call your ego Jessica. But that to me doesn't resonate, because Laura is my name. Laura is my ego. Once I die, there is no Laura. That's the end of the ego, right? So for me, it didn't resonate. So what I do is I just call it what it is. I call it my ego. So if I experience negative fear-based thoughts coming up, I just be like, oh, that's my ego just trying to keep me safe. So I'm separating myself from it. I'm acknowledging that even though I have these negative thoughts, it's just trying to keep me safe. And then I don't allow the ego mind to control me. So I don't allow it to get me back into the comfort zone. I don't allow the self-doubt to win, if that makes sense. So realize the ego is not you, it's the false self, but it is important, it's your identity. And to learn to separate yourself from that. Another tip I will give is to disconnect from your ego mind by observing it. So what you can do is just light a candle, stare at the candle flame, because it helps to quieten down the mind, and just observe your thoughts. Because your thoughts, that are running through your mind is your ego. So it's like getting familiar with what your thought patterns are and becoming aware, but also taking that step back to separate yourself and observe it. This is a really powerful step that will help level you up on your spiritual journey. Now, the second profound lesson that I learned was to let go of suppressed emotions. So I learned this from Dr. David Hawkins' book, Letting Go. And what he basically says in this book is that humans don't know how to deal with our emotions. So what we do is we repress and suppress them into our body. The three main ways we deal with our emotions is suppressions. That's like when something may have happened that upset you. This happened to me on Christmas. Something triggered me on Christmas that really upset me. And I was trying to have a good time because it's Christmas Day, but I could feel myself suppressing those emotions because I'm trying to pretend to be happy when that's not how I actually felt. That's what suppression is. And the second way is expression. So even if you express an emotion like you're crying, you're still suppressing some of that emotion in the body. And I'm not saying don't cry. Crying is good. It's a great release, but it's incorporating the Dr. David Hawkins' letting go technique when you're crying so that you're not suppressing the emotion. So expression is the second way that we still suppress. And then the third way is escapism. So we distract ourselves with things in the outer environment. We may use food, alcohol, drugs, TV, whatever, right? And so because that's the way we deal with our emotions, all we do is we just suppress more and more emotions in our bodies. And this is what keeps us low vibrational. He talks about in the book how there was a study done that basically shows that we have a filing system in the brain. And we have a bunch of thoughts stored to one emotion. So let's say you feel the emotion of fear. You're going to have all these thoughts based around fear. And he said that these thoughts can run into the thousands. So let's say instead of feeling fear, you feel anger. You're going to have a whole bunch of different thoughts from the filing system in the brain around anger. And because of that reason, because these thoughts can run into the thousands, he says it's far more effective to deal with your emotions instead of the thoughts. Because when you clear these emotions out of the body, that's going to clean up your thinking. It's the negative emotions that causes the negative thoughts. When you start feeling positive emotions, you'll naturally have positive thoughts as a side effect, because your positive emotions, like the filing system in your brain, will have thousands of positive thoughts to that positive emotion. So the way to let go of suppressed emotions is to apply Dr. David Hawkins' letting go technique. And this is where you accept the negative emotion without judgment. So when you notice you're in a negative emotional state, usually we resist because we don't actually know how to deal with the emotion. So we just resist by suppressing, expressing, or escaping. And instead, you just tell yourself, I accept this emotion without judgment, and allow it to be there. Instead of resisting, you just allow it. It's okay to feel a negative emotion, you know? And then you just sit with it, be present, and observe the emotion in the body and observe the physical sensations in the body. By doing this, you're allowing the emotion to run its course, and then it will just clear itself out of your body. And you know that you have successfully let go of a negative emotion because you will notice that you feel lighter and more uplifted. Like you actually feel this release and you're like, the emotion's gone. And so he talks about how basically we have a lot of these emotions suppressed in the body. So we've got to start surrendering them one by one by one. I saw an analogy that someone shared where it's like the analogy they used was a tissue box. You have a tissue box, you pull the tissues out one by one by one. That's like pulling the emotions out of the body. And as you do that over time, it's going to naturally start raising vibration to like permanently shift your vibration. And as that happens, because you're basically cleaning up your energy by doing this, and as that happens, you'll start having shifts in the outer reality. You'll start attracting in success effortlessly. Things will come to you so much easier, you know, like opportunities, love, money, whatever. A lot of these emotions, the suppressed negative emotions, is just causing these blocks and resistance and stopping things from coming to us. So what I found for me is I feel like I'm kind of being conditioned or programmed to naturally resist my negative emotions because that's something I've been doing since I was a kid because I was never taught how to deal with emotions. So instead, I've been focusing on training myself to create the new habit of accepting and allowing negative emotions instead. Because this is something you kind of want to be doing every day. Because emotions are going to come and go, right? Like your true self never changes. It's always the same. It's the thoughts and emotions that come and go in waves. So it's like riding the waves. You get a negative emotion, allow it to be there, clear it out. Then you go back to positive emotions. You may have another negative emotion, come back, you allow it to be there, you use the letting go technique, clear it out. And again, this is going to permanently start shifting vibration, raising you to higher frequencies. So commit to creating that daily practice and creating this new habit of accepting and allowing negative emotions. The third deeply profound lesson I learned is to spend time in your inner world. And this is because your inner world creates the outer environment. So the outer environment is a reflection, just like a mirror. And if you want the outer environment to change, the only way to change it is by changing your inner world, your inner environment. And so that's why I say spend time in your inner world, because there's, a lot of us need healing. A lot of us have these unresolved wounds and traumas in our inner world. These things need to be addressed, healed, released, like using the letting go technique to release suppressed emotions. Doing shadow work, so you start becoming aware of your shadow self. This is Carl Jung's psychology. So we all have a shadow, which is the repressed and rejected parts of ourselves. That if we don't do shadow work, we're not aware of it. So it's lingering in the background, creating problems in our life. We also want to go inwards so that we can self-reflect, because self-reflection leads to self-awareness. 90% of awareness is transformation. You can't change anything you're not aware of. So it's about going inwards, spending time self-reflecting, doing the inner work, the shadow work, finding your wounds, finding where you need healing, using the letting go technique to release these suppressed emotions, I would also recommend incorporating somatic breath work as well, because somatic breath work is another powerful way to release unresolved trauma from the nervous system. I would also recommend going into your internal world to reprogram your subconscious mind, because a lot of us have had negative programming. Your subconscious mind controls 95% of the outer reality. So the only way to change the outer reality is by changing the programming of your subconscious mind. So we need to go inwards and reprogram ourselves by doing what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls mental rehearsal. So this is going in meditation. You start mentally rehearsing, things you want to experience in your life, or you mentally rehearse new thoughts, new emotions. You start feeling new emotions in the body to start reconditioning the body, because the body is intelligent. It's the unconscious mind, and the body's in control, not the mind. Again, this is Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. So our body can memorize negative emotions as well. And a lot of us have bodies that memorize negative emotions. So by going into meditation and doing mental rehearsal, rehearsing new thoughts and new emotions, feeling new emotions in the body, like positive emotions like worthiness, confidence, abundance, you start going inwards and doing that, you're going to change your state of being. The key is consistency, so practice and repetition, doing it every day, conditioning the body to feel these positive emotions so that it starts memorizing these emotions, so then it becomes your natural state. And then you can start manifesting your desires this way. You can start bringing things in to your life. It's really powerful work. So I would recommend starting up like a daily meditation practice of going into your inner world to do this sort of work. Another reason you want to go into your inner world is to also learn to connect to your higher self. Because a lot of us are spending far too much time operating from the ego mind. And meditation is one way to get out of the ego and ground yourself in the body, connect to the heart. When you do that, when you're out of the ego, you're connected to the heart, which is your soul. Your higher self is connected to your soul as well. This is when you can start making that connection to your higher self. Your higher self is like you, but in a higher state of consciousness. So it can bring you higher, more positive wisdom and clarity around whatever you are going through in life. And you can also just become like this channel of just information. And it's just so, like, it raises your vibration. It feels really amazing, but you feel really connected to this higher power. And again, you can channel like intuitive guidance that's going to help you in life. So this is why we want to spend time in our internal worlds. We spend far too much time focusing on the external environment, getting caught up in this and all the noise and distractions. And that's why so many people are disconnected from their soul and higher self. It's about going inwards. And again, I recommend a daily practice of doing this, because the more you do it, the better you will get. When I first started this work, when I first started meditating, I was terrible. I didn't have any cool experiences. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sitting there going, am I doing it right? Like, is there more to it? I don't fucking know what I'm doing right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to just keep consistent with it, keep practicing it. And over time, you get better, you improve, you have breakthroughs and realizations and epiphanies, and, you channel information and you start feeling more and more connected, and it will just level you up on this journey. The fourth deeply profound lesson I learned was to recreate a new self-image and identity. These things, your identity and your self-image, control a lot of things in your reality, a lot of your experiences. Dr. Joe Dispenza says the way you think, feel, and act creates your personality, and your personality is what creates your personal reality. And if you want your personal reality to change, the only way to do that is by changing your personality. And the way you change your personality is by changing the way you think, feel, and act. So the cool thing about doing this work is you get to create a new version of you, the preferred version of you. Think about the version of you that's living the dream life. What's their identity? How do they think, feel, and act? Do you think they're going to be the type of person that's going to complain and whinge and always be angry at life or in a fearful state? No. The version of you is going to be thriving. It's going to be operating in love, peace, joy, and gratitude. So you get to recreate this preferred version. And then the key is to start wiring it in, just like how I said in lesson number 3, which was in meditation and using mental rehearsal. The same idea, you wire in the new identity through mental rehearsal. You mentally rehearse it in your mind. You get emotionally involved and you start shifting your identity, and that's what shifts reality. And your self-image as well plays another role. So your self-image is part of the identity. It's like your self-image is a mental blueprint of who you believe you are. For example, let's say you view yourself as someone that's always late. And you say it to other people, I'm always late, I'm never on time. That's part of your self-image. Because you have that self-image, you're going to always turn up late. You're never going to be on time. But if you change that self-image to someone that's organized and always on time, I'm a punctual person, then you'll be able to start showing up on time. It's the same with money. You know, you may want to be more wealthy. You may want to earn $1 million a year. It's possible for all of us, by the way. But if your self-image is someone that can only earn, say, $60,000 a year, then that's what you're going to earn. So it's about changing your self-image to being able to see yourself or view yourself as someone that can make $1 million. When you have that self-image, you'll be able to make that money. You'll be able to attract it in. So again, think about the best version of you that's living that dream life. Get a piece of paper and a pen out and just start writing down the way this person is, the way they think, feel, and act. How do they view themselves? Do they view themselves as being able to make $1 million? Whatever it is you're wanting in life, create that identity and image around that. Start wiring it in using lesson number 3, meditation and mental rehearsal. Commit to it every day. And as you start shifting the self-image and the identity, you'll start noticing the shifts in your reality. Now, one more tip for this as well that I realized is that another thing that helps to shift identity and self-image, like doing the internal work, is great because you're literally rewiring your brain. You're making new synaptic connections in the brain, rewiring the brain, reprogramming the subconscious mind. But what also helps is taking empowered, aligned action. When you start taking action, like new action that maybe the old identity wouldn't do, that also helps to shift the self-image and identity. So for example, I'm working on building a coaching business and I didn't know how to get started. As someone that wasn't certified, I haven't been trained, I didn't know how to be a coach, I didn't have the self-image of a coach, and I ended up attracting a one-on-one coach to help me start my coaching business. And I ended up attracting the first pro bono client. So by taking the action of getting a pro bono client, it's starting to shift my self-image towards being a coach. I then ended up getting an opportunity to apply to be a support coach for this massive online event. It was of over 30,000 people. So I took the empowered, aligned action of applying to be a support coach. I got picked. They had about 70 people, so they picked about 20, 25 of us. I got picked, and it was a big event, like 28 days straight. And I felt, because I took the action, I got the role, I showed up every day. Towards the end of that event, I felt within me that shift in my identity and the self-image. I started feeling more like a coach. Once that happened, I attracted my first paying client. So taking action helps. Now, the last one, number 5, is God is a high vibrational frequency within you. I am not a religious person, never have been, never will be. I spent probably like the first 30 years of my life anti-God. I was anti-religion, anti-Jesus, anti-God. You could not talk to me about these things. My response would be, oh, load of shit. That was because when I was 6 years old, I had a friend that got killed by a horse. And my little 6-year-old child mind didn't really understand the situation. And at the same time that happened, they had people coming into school to teach us Bible in schools. So they'll teach us about this amazing God. And in my little child mind, I thought, oh yeah, if he's so amazing, why would he take my friend? So I completely rejected it all. And then it wasn't until I went into meditation one day and I just got into this high vibrational state of bliss, like really high frequencies. I felt so good. I was blissed out. I became a channel for this higher information. Just all this stuff was coming through and I'm just like, oh my God. And I came out of that meditation like there is a higher power. Like I just connected to it. Oh my God. You know what I mean? It completely converted me. And now I realize like the power of meditation. And because I studied all these spiritual teachers, like Dolores Cannon, for example, would say that God's pure consciousness and unconditional love. And that resonates with my soul. That to me is what God is. It's a high vibrational frequency within us that we can tune into. We can connect to God by going inwards. Another reason to spend time in your inner world, because that's how I connected to God. It completely converted me. I'm a God person now. I talk to God like quite a lot. You know, I always tell God I love God. And there's a part of me that thinks it's funny. I think it's so funny because of how I was anti it for like 30 years that I'm now like on the other side of the fence. If I can be converted, anyone can be converted. So I agree with Dolores Cannon, which is what she said is that God is pure consciousness and unconditional love. And there are other sources that back that up as well. Because everything at the end of the day, at the fundamental level, is just energy. That's all it is. And I had this realization that, well, if everything's energy, then God must be the main energy source where it all comes from. And I've heard, I can't say if this is true or not, but it does resonate with me that basically everything's energy. Energy is consciousness and consciousness is God. So it's basically saying that everything is God. And we're God in human form. So our soul is a piece of God. It came from God. That's why we're all connected as one. All our souls come from the same place. We're all God pretending to be different people. So I'm God pretending to be Laura. My cat is God pretending to be a cat. And it's just the main energy source of everything, including our souls. So going inwards is the key to connecting to God. You do not need to go to a church. Like I said, I'm not into religion. And I don't mean to offend anyone if you are into religion and watching this. This is just my personal beliefs. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong. But a lot of people have been taught that to connect to God, to go to church. And that is not true. You do not need to go to a building to connect with God because God's within you. It's about turning your attention inwards. And the best place to connect to God is actually in nature because God is nature. So by going out into nature, you're already connected to spirit. You're amongst spirit. Another thing I would recommend is just talking to God, acknowledging God. And you will make that connection. If you keep practicing it, keep turning inwards, you will eventually make that connection if you don't straight away. Trust that. Trust the process. God loves us. I still think it's so funny that I say that now. I never would have thought, if you told my past self I would be making a video talking about this, I would have laughed my ass off. That's how funny it is. But again, if I can be converted, anyone can be. So I hope I inspired you with this video. I hope you apply these things that I have talked about, because I do know that it's going to improve your life. You know, I did have a spiritual awakening 5-6 years ago, but I have been on the personal development journey for 15 years. And these are like the top 5 things that I've learnt in that time. So if you got value, just let me know by hitting the like button or write a comment. If you like this sort of content, make sure you subscribe. And I'll leave a follow-up video here, 9 things that I stopped doing after my spiritual awakening. So feel free to check that out. Have an awesome day. Peace.